Today, we have our very first mock draft post the NFL draft. Excited to bring you this Superflex 1.75 tight end premium rookie mock draft. Stick around for all that and more. Welcome into the Data Construction Podcast. Justin with David and JP. We know there are a lot of places you can consume post NFL Draft Combine. We thank you for joining us. We're going to hop right into this. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, and we're going to be going to a sleeper draft board here. How we're going to be doing this again: 1.75 tight end premium super flex. So quarterbacks, tight ends, more valuable. JP is going to pick first. I will pick second. David will pick third, and it'll just keep going in that order. No serpentine, just JP 1, 4, 7, 10, etc. It will make sense. And we're going to hop right in because we don't want to waste your time to pick 101, JP.
Yeah, at the 101, this is going to be a very easy decision. It's going to be running back Ashton Genty. He was drafted to the Raiders. I mean, we expect a top 10 draft capital. Going as the sixth overall player in the NFL draft is just incredible. And with Pete Carroll there, he likes to run the ball a lot. They don't have other competition that's worth a worth a damn on that Raiders team. And they got Geno Smith at quarterback, so I think the offense actually might be pretty decent. So I think this is just going to be Pete Carroll's new Marshawn Lynch that he just rides all season long.
Yeah, Genty is great. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 Janties incoming across my 14 team portfolio. Might trade one, but just excited to have him, add him. What can you say? 102, it's a tough choice. I'm staring it in the face in a couple of leagues. And what are you really going to do here? Do you take the safest play, a round one running back in Hampton? If you need quarterback, I can understand going that way, but in a mock draft needs independent, I'm not going to go Cam Ward. McMillan, we took him in our rookie pick season pre-draft, and we like his landing spot. Travis Hunter, David's going over him easily in consideration. To me, it comes down to Travis Hunter, comes down to Hampton. And with Hampton, it's safety with top 10 running back ceiling, but just a round one running back, Chargers offense. I think Hunter has a higher value ceiling, potentially higher production ceiling. If I have to give advice in a vacuum, I have to go Hampton. And that is what I'm going to do here. Hunter's the swing. If you can afford Hunter, if you can afford to miss, which we're not going to do a lot of talk for everyone, but after whoever picks Hunter, I'd like to have a quick conversation just about what missing looks like for him.
Jeez, I thought you were going to make this a little easier on me. I am between Tet and Hunter here personally. I do think, obviously, like you said, if you need quarterback, Ward is fine to pick here. I don't think Hampton was a bad pick or anything. I love me some receivers. What can I say? So the question really is, do I want Tet McMillan, where he's clearly the number one, maybe not quite as good of an offense, but we saw some improvements last year? Or do I want, I believe, the better wide receiver prospect? Just so many question marks. The upside is awesome with Travis Hunter. I just worry. We've been talking about this a lot, going back and forth, JP and I, on exactly how we feel about Hunter, because we both agree we love him as a prospect. It's just the risk of, like, with Tet McMillan maximizing his NFL value to his team maximizes his fantasy value. But with Travis Hunter, you can't always say the same, because there's going to be times where he's more valuable on the other side of the ball, like game to game, drive to drive, whatever. Does that cost him a couple targets a game? Does that cost him a couple touchdowns a year? Man, I don't know. I go back and forth on this a lot. It's really a difficult decision. I don't fault anyone for going either direction with their wide receiver one this year. I like to hear JP talk about Travis Hunter, though, so I'm going to let him have that chance. I'm going to take Tet McMillan. But, like, it's legitimately a coin flip for me at this point between these two. It's team dependent, and in a vacuum, I could flip a coin and I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, no, I can't blame you. I think Ted McMillan, he's still a top 20 dynasty wide receiver to me right off the jump. He got really good draft capital. I mean, You look at Travis Hunter's draft capital; it's one of the best. It's the best we've ever seen from a wide receiver outside of Calvin Johnson, who he's one of the best prospects we've ever seen as well. And like I do think Cam Ward to take him in the top four, like it definitely is on the table, but just in a vacuum, the way we're doing it right here, the quarterback's not nearly as liquid as wide receiver. So I am going to go Travis Hunter here. David kind of alluded to it because he knows how much I love the player, but it's just one of the best wide receiver prospects we've had in the last decade, and it does stink that he could have a slightly capped ceiling because he's getting extra snaps, a little bit extra injury risk, and but it's really good though that the Jaguars drafting him did say that he's going to be on the offensive side of the ball first. So that's checking one box there. He has a quarterback as well. So if he went to Cleveland, he wouldn't have really had anything at quarterback. So I don't care what you think about Trevor Lawrence. He's not a bottom, 25% quarterback in the league. He's at least average, and he's at least has the upside to become a little bit above average. The only problem is, of course, the cornerback stuff, and we do have BTJ there, but I kind of think that Travis Hunter was kind of going to be like the Malik Neighbors to Brian Thomas Jr. going back to LSU, where Brian Thomas he's getting a lot of the downfield looks with some slants and everything mixed in there as well. But I think Travis Hunter, when he's on the field, he's going to really eat in the intermediate and short area of the field. It's just all about the snap count. Like, how much is he really going to play? Because, I mean, you look at reception perception, is one of the best wide receiver prospects he's ever charted with 97th percentile success rate versus zone and press. That's insane. Man is 92nd. He's got a full green route tree. One of the freakiest athletes we've seen. I mean, I can go on and on about how great this player is, but at this point, the risk is definitely worth it.
Yeah, and we worry about him missing, quote unquote, right, when we're taking him this early versus earlier in the offseason when we were talking about drafting him 1, 9, 10, 11, 12. The steam's really picked up as the hype train for wide receivers picked up. And when I think about Travis Hunter, like missing, so to speak, like if we pick him here, the the missing outcome I more envision is a Zay Flowers, Devonta Smith, wide receiver 20 to 30 range player, which you don't want to get from pick 4. But I think he's so good that even if he plays 60% wide receiver, he can put that in like 60% of snaps, right? Because 60% of snaps is nothing to laugh at if you're getting worked out. And just the value high end outcome is Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, right? He has that as a range of outcomes if he's who we think he could be. So I guess like David, do you see a lower range of outcomes for Hunter than that as a probable outcome or not necessarily?
I wouldn't use the word lower. No, I'd say wider range of outcomes.
Well, I mean like you see a lower outcome than that wide receiver 20 to 30 range, correct? As a
I think, yeah, I mean, I think none of us really want to admit it. And based on the way they're talking about him, we don't think this is likely. But what if he shows he's an all pro corner and an average wide receiver? You know, we could be wrong about our evaluations on him. They could decide that he's much more valuable at corner and they still want to use him on offense some, but it's not nearly enough to consider starting him. So, I mean, I think it's possible. I'm not betting on it, but it is possible. That's not possible for Ted McMillan. He's not going to become a cornerback.
Right. No, I mean that's right, and I think that at least is in the range of like the range of outcomes there. I think Liam Cohen being offensive minded guy kind of helps him a little bit. I think the fact that Trevor Lawrence hasn't quite hit the ceiling that we've hoped for, I think that kind of helps Travis Hunter's case a little bit more because I think they're going to be very motivated to make that Trevor Lawrence successful. And a wide receiver is just a more valuable position. When you look at contracts, they're making not quite double as the top corners, but it's pretty darn close after what we saw from Jamar Chase. So I think that is at least in Travis Hunter's favor as well. But yeah, there's definitely a wide range of outcomes.
Yeah, and I want to be clear. Like, I still love Hunter as a prospect. He's a lot of fun. I think he's going to be great, and I do understand taking him over Tet. Absolutely. It's about risk tolerance, so that's why I think it's team to team for which I'll have ranked higher. So I hope to get some exposure to him. There's a couple of spots I think I'll be able to get him. I might even take him over Tet in a league or two. It really depends. But yeah, I look forward to watching his career. I think it's going to be really exciting to see if he can actually dominate on both sides of the ball in the NFL. Kind of like what Otani's done for baseball. It could be really fun.
Would be really fun to watch. 100% would love to see it. I also love to see the 105 being my pick here because I do view this as a tier. I think JP and I really talked about this, maybe our 110 video pre NFL draft, that we started to see like maybe the 105 when previously we viewed the 104 as a tier break is a new tier break with, where we're kind of viewing Hunter as we got closer to the draft and bolder with our vibes. And so the fourth player that was in our original tier, now the fifth player in a tier to me is Cam Ward in Superflex, the 101. I just can't not go this guy. I love Judkins' landing spot. I love Henderson's landing spot. I think they're both phenomenal and probably almost in a tier of their own potentially, not to bury the lead too much, but I can't take those guys over a quarterback in a vacuum. I could consider doing it needs dependent at the 105 and letting Ward slip to the 106 in some drafts, but I can't advise that as a ranking.
Yeah, I think anytime the top pick in the draft at quarterback position in Superflex League falls to the fifth pick, it's hard to imagine a class where that's not at least good value. I wouldn't be surprised if he falls a little bit in some other drafts just because, well, we do all the planning. We can get all this prep in. We can consume as much content as we want. And then when you actually get into your rookie drafts, they still just never go how you expect. So I can see him falling a little bit further, but I think in most leagues, 105 is the floor for Cam Ward, as it should be. I do think my position here is not too difficult. I'll explain a few guys I would consider. Trevion Henderson will end up being my pick. I just believe the explosiveness, the opportunity he has in that offense. I think he's just going to be a great fantasy asset. I would consider Tyler Warren, but I don't love his landing spot. I think Amecha Igbuka be the next wide receiver. His year one doesn't look too great, so I think there might be a decent buying window next offseason, throughout the season somewhere. So I don't mind drafting him, but this is just a little soon. Jackson Dart, the other quarterback, I'm just, it's the Giants. Jackson Dart's an all right prospect. Quinnshon Judkins would be the other consideration at running back. I think we're in a new tier here, and I think it's reasonable to consider several players, but I like the explosiveness and the opportunity Trevion Henderson brings. So that's the way I'm going to go here.
Yeah, that's where I would have gone as well. I was hoping that he would fall to me, but like you outlined with Tyler Warren, the Colts, I just don't love that landing spot because I think that they got a pretty decent collection of pass catchers and not a great quarterback, and it's just kind of crowded for targets. But I like that Loveland went to the Bears, so he's somebody like I started to consider here, but then with Burden going there, all that excitement started to wane quite a bit. But I think that the other guy you mentioned there, in Quinnshon Judkins, that's going to be my pick here. He got pretty surprising draft capital right into the top of the second round of the Browns, where there's just great opportunity to be had there. I Some people like really loved it. I think that landing spot's just okay, but the draft capital is very strong. He's definitely going to have a floor, but I think the ceiling is limited a little bit since he's not a pass catcher as much for a not great offense. But I think he's still going to get his fair share of touchdowns, and he's at least got some explosive ability.
I also saw someone talking about him uh, in a BDG fantasy my guys video. I'll make sure to link it in the episode below. Give a shout out to the guy who it was as well. And he said he had the same 40-yard split that like Xavier Worthy did, or 10-yard split in the 40 as Xavier Worthy did, just not the same long speed. Again, check that video out in the episode description below. Check his statistics out, etc. But I think that's something about him. He doesn't have the explosive long speed Henderson does. He can still break one for the house, but Henderson can break kind of anything for the house. Like he's not Achan, he's not Gibbs, but he's somewhere in between superhumans and those guys, right? Is Henderson. Like Judkins is kind of in that superhumans range, right? He still can break it to the house. To me, these two guys are their own tier right now. And I'm curious if you guys kind of agree with that, just based off of the landing spots for everyone else. I'll go David, then JP.
I kind of agree. I think if you're rebuilding, though, I could see taking Igbuka or Warren because I don't love year one for them, but I like their outlook long term. So if you're willing to eat a bad year one with those two and you don't want a running back, I could see that.
Yeah, I think with the balance of the long term and the short term, I do think that this is a tier personally, just a little mini one.
Yeah, and it's not a permanent tier, not a hard line in the sand tier, but just kind of a if we can afford to take these guys, we're probably willing to pay a little bit, maybe a third or something over the other guys. I'd personally willing to pay probably a third, something like that to go from those guys to this guys, but probably not willing to take a third to go down. So just kind of interesting thought there. Pick 8. This is a murky spot to be in. I'm considering just what I've been seeing in my rookie draft so far. Today is Saturday, April 27th, as we're doing this exercise. I've seen Harvey go at the 108 already today. And seeing Harvey going here, going to the Broncos, not a running back that I was that high on, just because a lot of film guys I've listened to have said his vision is questionable, but a guy that I was interested in as a second round, early third flyer if you went round 3, 4, but going round 2 and going to the Broncos, wow, he's interesting. Igbuka, interesting here. I've seen Jackson Dart go here. I don't like having to make this pick because I feel like now, to me, this kind of feels like the first pick in a new tier. And I never like sitting at the top of the tier, which is how I feel right now. So with all of that being said, if I have to pick one player today at a 1.75 tight end premium, and I don't have team needs, I think I'm gonna go Warren here. Yeah, it's between him and Ibuka for me. Those are the top 2 players on my board at this point. I'm gonna go Warren. I'm gonna go the tight end. Lack of target competition, even if we don't like the spot. I'm not happy with it. I don't like sitting at the top of the tier.
Sorry, my dog is being loud tonight. So if you see me looking off to the side, I'm trying to calm him down. Like, I think Warren's a good pick there. I think this is definitely a muddy part of this draft, but also I'm happy to be in this area. Probably got in here pretty cheap, and I still like a lot of these players. Last year's draft was more exciting because it was just a better draft for fantasy. It was kind of an outlier in that it was so elite. But in general, at the 109, like, I don't expect to get a first round receiver that I really liked. That's why I'm going to go with Amecha Igbuka. I think we still got a couple running backs worth considering. I think Colston Loveland certainly could be considered here, but I like Igbuka long term. He's kind of like what a Day last year, Jason the year before. You let him, develop for year one. A couple of the veterans leave. All of a sudden, he's the guy there, and he gets a huge value boost. So
Yeah, no, I don't blame you. I think both him and Burden kind of got spots where you don't love to see it, especially for year one. But the difference is we kind of liked Ibuka a little bit more, anyways. He actually got stronger draft capital, and I don't know. I just think that he's going to be better. I just think Mike Evans with him with his age and everything. We don't know if DJ Moore is definitely going to be gone in the near future for sure. There's just rumors for now. But no, I think that's a good pick. I think with my next pick, I'm going to go with the other tight end in Colston Loveland. I've always really liked him through the process. He got strong draft capital as well, and 1.75 tight end premium league. I think that it's going to be really nice to see the connection grow between him and Caleb Williams. And we saw Ben Johnson. I mean, he made Sam Laporta very, very productive as a rookie. Now the room is more crowded than it was for Sam Laporta's rookie year, so it might be a little bit more difficult. But maybe if there is the DJ Moore thing comes to fruition where he's traded, or maybe that happens after 2025, I think that he's going to be pretty well set up in the future.
1.75 tight end premium, top 10 pick at the tight end position. Can't disagree with that pick whatsoever. It's tough to pick between Warren and Loveland. I kind of think whoever you get later is probably the better pick, especially if you can trade back and get the guy if one of them clearly becomes the earlier pick in your fantasy drafts. But I would love to get some exposure to both. At the 111, I'm between RJ Harvey and Jackson Dart, I believe. Caleb Johnson comes to mind too as a possible pick. Little bit later pick. Just a guy that I'm less excited about than Harvey, honestly, just because I don't know what the Steelers' offense is going to look like, but I know that the Broncos' offense is going to look better as the season goes on because it looked better as the season went on last year. They added a running back that they like a little bit more. Nix is getting better. I think he is going to be my pick at the 111. Just starts probably a better process pick, but I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go Harvey here. It's gonna feels weird, but can't ignore second round draft capital. Can't ignore how great historically a Sean Payton offense is for running backs from his time at the Saints, his time here with the Broncos. I just think don't get take lock. Let's listen to the NFL.
Yeah, I'll just talk about Harvey real quick because he's been one of my guys throughout this process. First thing I want to say is, well, I'm not a film guy, so like, this is what I saw. I thought he had pretty darn good vision. I thought he was really patient. I thought he was explosive through the hole, which I think is a great combination. Because if you're patient, you wait for your blocks to set up, and you can explode through that hole pretty quickly. Then you know a lot of the work's done for you already. Thought he was pretty good with making second level defenders miss. His statistical profile backs that up. I did not expect second round draft capital. This is about the best you could possibly hope for RJ Harvey. I like the pick here. I think it's pretty cool. I like to see it for him. Someone I've been rooting for through this process. As for my pick, kind of three players worth talking about: Caleb Johnson, Jackson Dart, Matthew Golden. Two first round players, first round quarterback, first round receiver, and a third round running back we like in a good spot. This is a tough decision, and I do think at this point very team dependent in real life. But I don't have a team to reference here. So I'm just going to lean into positional scarcity. I'm going to take the first round wide receiver. If he does hit, he's already got his alpha wide receiver there. So I think Jackson Dart has some upside. I think he's a good pick here at the 112. And yeah, I don't know about year one starting, probably about halfway through when they give up on their other veterans. But if you don't need them to start, especially, I think it's a good stash here, good long term value.
Yeah, I can't blame you for going with a round one quarterback. I remember this was kind of the range that Bo Nix was going in around last year. So I think Bo Nix was definitely a better prospect, showed better stuff. But I mean, shoot, Jackson Dart was the number one graded passer on PFF in college football, despite I know there's a lot of stuff with the scheme. But yeah, no, good pick overall. And then there's two guys left here that I'm considering. I think where Justin's sitting would be a really good spot at the 202 because I think you're going to get either Matthew Golden or Caleb Johnson if Jackson Dart doesn't fall. So it's a tough spot because Caleb Johnson, I think that is a good fit for him. There's not much there outside of Jalen Warren. They are a pretty run heavy team. He's just not quite the pass catcher, but I mean we've seen the Steelers just ride a running back that likes to play with power with Najee Harris just over and over. And I think Caleb Johnson at this point of his career is probably gonna be better than Najee Harris. Matthew Golden also. It's a crowded room, but there's no real alpha there, no real stud. We like Jaden Reed, but he doesn't really profile as that kind of stud anyways. So I think that I'll take the higher upside swing right here in Matthew Golden. I really like the player a lot, and I think that him having Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love is going to be a really, really good start for him.
Cannot blame anybody for going with a round one wide receiver in a crowded but open wide receiver room with a quarterback that we believe in as an NFL talent. Process is good. You're happy to be able to get him at the 1-2 turn. I just think I'm happy I'm taking Caleb Johnson and not Golden here just in a vacuum. Obviously, if I was looking at this as a draft, David likes to point this out of I took Hampton, maybe the diversity of a wide receiver would be nice here if I'm actually looking at this from the second draft slot here. But just in a vacuum, I think Caleb Johnson here is phenomenal value. I've seen him go 109, 110 in several leagues today that I'm in. And yeah, this is not a bad spot in the draft to be sitting still. I think I feel as good about taking Johnson here at the 202. I mean, I'd consider him at the 110, 111. And honestly, I think you're going to see all of these five guys moving all over the place. Pittsburgh Steelers running back, I'm happy to get that. Day two draft capital, I'm happy to get that. I think he's the type of guy that they will give a lot of work to.
Johnson was the obvious pick there. I think a lot of people would argue that's the end of a tier. I know who I'm going to take here because I think he belongs in this tier. And while it makes me very nervous, it makes me very sad because not only did he not get first round draft capital like I thought he would, but he went to a very crowded offense and my least favorite team. My guy, Luther Burden. I still believe in him. I've heard the way Ben Johnson has talked about him. I still think long term this is actually going to be pretty good. And I think if you're drafting him at the 203 or later in your rookie drafts, you're going to end up being thrilled that you did so. But there's definitely more risk in an already risky profile. So I get why he's fallen here. And it definitely, I mean, it's about the worst spot that he could have landed for fantasy. But I still believe in the player. I believe in the talent. And his offensive play call is super creative. And this is the kind of guy that you need to get creative with. So I think the high end upside is still there. There's just a little higher percentage of the bust.
Yeah, I believe what Ben Johnson said about him was stud. That's what he thinks of him. So I guess that's the reason they took him is because they probably saw him as a first round talent. And they're like, you know what? We don't really have a great wide receiver three. I mean, filling your wide receiver three hole at that point probably isn't like top priority, but if it's a first round talent in your eyes, I can't blame them. So I really hope that they do move on from DJ Moore this year or next year. It really sucks for freaking Roman Dunze. Like, geez, the room opened up, and then they bring in two other pass catchers, probably two first round talents, arguably. That sucks for my Dunze shares, but I don't know. I guess DJ Moore could still move on. He plays X, so it might not affect Burden terribly. But, anyways, on to my pick. I think that Trey Harris is in consideration here. He went to a nice spot with the Chargers with round 2 draft capital. I think running back still is in consideration. I have just been a big fan of Cam Scatabo, and I think I'm just going to take him here. I think Tyron Tracy, I think he's pretty good running back, but he's not somebody that really gets your gears turned to be your RB1 in the NFL. And I think Scatabo is just a lot thicker, so I think he's going to handle the goal line stuff for sure. And he's just a guy that you root for, and I think he's just a really hard worker that teams are really going to value it. They're going to have a hard time keeping him off the field. I know it's the Giants. The offense really has to prove itself. Neighbors really helps the case a lot there. But I think that with he offers ability as a touchdown scorer and as a receiver as well. So I don't hate the spot. Would have liked to see day 2 capital, but right at the very, very top of round 4 wasn't too bad.
Yeah, I was hoping to get him at 204 in a draft earlier today. He went 203. I ended up taking Burden. I think those are the picks at those two spots. And now it opens up an interesting spot in 1.75 tight end premium. We have a lot of tight ends. Terrence Turd Ferguson. His name is not Turd. It just makes me giggle. Mason Taylor, Elijah Royo, all kind of come into mind here. If you need a tight end, take your guy here at 205. Wide receivers, Trey Harris and Higgins, second round wide receivers that I believe in. Both big guys, both quarterbacks we trust. I think they're both worth a shot at the 205 as well. I think the direction I'm going to go is going to be Harris, just because I think Herbert is a somewhere between top 4 and 8 quarterback in the NFL. And we saw a guy that's not very good in Quentin Johnson do some fantasy relevant things there. And I think Trey Harris, although his route tree might not be really good, I think is going to be able to get open, and Herbert is going to be able to put it right in his hands enough that he can pay off here. Start 11, start 10. I'm a lot more interested than in start 9, but I think he has the ability to hit in start 9. Just I think his distribution of outcomes is more useful in a higher starter number.
That's fair for sure. I also think he'd be fun in best ball. You know, how often are we going to feel confident starting him? But he'll probably have those weeks where you wish he did, which can be sometimes frustrating in lineup leagues. And I already have exposure to Harris in 2 leagues, and I've only seen him get drafted in 2 leagues so far. So here's to hoping that he hits. I like the prospect. I like the pick. He's who I would have gone with if he was still available. Some interesting names to consider here. I think he talked about most of them, so I'm not going to bore us for too long. I'm kind of just between my next tight end, which would be Mason Taylor, and the guy I'm going to take, which was the first receiver taken in the second round, even before Burden, Jaden Higgins to Houston. We did like him a lot as a prospect. There are some holes for sure, but we love that he's going to a good offense. He's not going to have to be the number one guy. Nico's going to take care of that. Nico can do all the dirty work because he's just awesome. So Higgins will still be able to get open. He'll be probably the number two. I mean, Kirk's there. If Kirk can have a resurgence, maybe he is. They also drafted the other Oklahoma State receiver, which we might get, or Iowa State receiver, sorry, we might get to later. He's interesting, but I think follow the draft capital when the same team drafts the two guys. So I'm going to go with Higgins.
One thing I did see that was interesting on that follow the draft capital was just from a Packers standpoint that Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft, right? Sometimes they draft a guy higher because he fits a specific athletic build, but maybe they like the other guy almost
I
as
mean, it
much.
always happens. Yeah, it can happen.
But following the draft capital historically, good idea.
Yeah, this kind of where it opens up a lot to me. I think that you guys mentioned tight end is definitely viable here. The Mason Taylor, Terrence Ferguson spots, the draft capital they got was pretty good. I think I kind of want to wait on that because I think that Taylor, Ferguson, Arroyo, all second round, like I don't see them all three that differently right now. I think there's two running backs I'm considering. It's Bachel, Tutin, Dylan Samson, and then there's three wide receivers I like, and that's Jack Besh, Jalen Knowles is somebody I've really liked, and Kyle Williams is somebody I've really risen on a lot, especially with the Patriots landing spot at the top of the third round. The way I've heard scouts talk about him over like the last month, he was kind of off the radar until like the Senior Bowl, and I really like him a lot. He's definitely in consideration. I just think that I really like Tutin, but they're going in the fourth round. I mean, I took Scatabo, so they went back to back. I think that they could move either ETN or Tank Bigsby, and I think he's probably the swing that's probably the best right now. So I'll go ahead and take Tutin.
Cannot disagree with Tutin. I do think, and from what I've seen and what I've heard, somewhere between the 205 to the 211 is the range he should and likely will be going in leagues, just depending on preference at this point. Kind of what flavor do you want? And at this point, there's running backs that I like, but I don't love the landing spot. God, I would have loved to see Dylan Sampson go somewhere other than where Quinnshon Judkins is sitting. This is not a crazy time to start considering a shot on either a Jalen Milrow or a Shador Sanders because I do feel like it's kind of fallen off a little bit, but I can't pass up on a round two tight end. So it's just a question of which flavor do you want when it comes to tight end at this point. Arroyo is the athletic guy. I think he has the highest end outcome, but I don't know that I trust the situation there. I also don't know that I trust that he's going to be on the field enough. I think Fant is a really good tight end, really good NFL tight end, does a lot of things well and will be on the field a lot of the time. And it might be Arroyo just in two tight end spots at the beginning and then working in more, although they do have a weak wide receiver room. Taylor, well, I liked him a lot as a prospect. I like the draft capital. I don't love the Jets landing spot. And we also see Ferguson with round three draft capital. Cooper Cup moving on. I think I'm going to go the direction of Ferguson. I just trust that they draft guys, Tutu Atwell, that they know how to use, even though they haven't historically always in the second round. But it's really just pick your flavor at tight end. I think if those guys went with the next two picks as well, like it's not honestly, this is great value for a round two tight end and a 1.75 tight end premium. I probably am looking more top of the third, back of the second a little bit further. I'd push them down a little more in non tight end premium, but I like the Rams. I like a second round tight end.
I think it sounded like they had their eyes on him because they were, at least from what I heard, they said they were confident they were still going to get their guy when they made their trade back, which to me says that this was their guy. Which I mean, that speaks pretty highly of him. I think they've shown they could use a tight end. Even Tyler Higbee's not that great, and he had some decent seasons. So definitely like that pick there. I do think tight end is kind of the strength of the board right now, but I do want to bring up a name just to plant the seed. 'Cause I don't want to have to be the guy to draft him, but he needs to get drafted at some point soon. Probable Saints starting quarterback for at least several games this season, Tyler Shook. But one of you guys draft him, so I don't have to draft the guy. I do not like him. I don't want to draft him anywhere, but this is the range where like it's hard to pass up a late second for a guy that's going to start at least half a season, if not more. I don't know. I think I'd take him over Milrow and Shador personally. I think I can understand Milrow because of the upside, but here I am talking about a quarterback when I'm not even considering drafting one. So I think it is between the tight ends Jay or Justin was just talking about. So I'm going to make my decision pretty quickly. I'm going to go with Mason Taylor here. He's been my tight end 3 through at least the back end of this process, but really most of the process. I like the landing spot. I know we don't love Justin Fields as a quarterback, but he's not awful. And like after Garrett Wilson, who who do the Jets have to catch passes? Brees Hall, Alan Lazard is still a starting wide receiver there, I believe. Josh Reynolds, I think, is the third. So like the opportunity is there for him to make a year one impact at tight end, especially in 175. Just give him those checkdowns, give him short routes, pepper him with targets. Let's get that extra 7.5 every catch, and let's rack up those catches. So I'm happy with him here. I think any of those three tight ends are a great value at this point.
Cannot blame you there. Yeah, he was the third best. He was the third tight end drafted. So I don't blame you there. I mean, they don't really have many other pass catchers, and a lot of NFL teams thought he could have gone in round one as well. So I think that is a good pick there for sure. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna start to take a swing at wide receiver here, and it's the next wide receiver that was drafted in the NFL, and that is wide receiver Jack Bech of the Raiders. I think that he's a pretty good player. I mean, when I saw the reception perception on him, I was pretty surprised. I mean, 91st percentile success rate versus press, 85th versus man. It's like, wow, okay, that guy seems like he's going to be an X wide receiver, and that's kind of exactly what the Raiders needed since Jacoby Myers is not that. They have Geno Smith there, who's a quarterback that I believe in and think is pretty good. So I think that's exactly what the Raiders were missing in their wide receiver room. There's plenty of opportunity, and I think he could be pretty useful in year one. So I like Jack Bech, and we've heard all about how he led all the LSU wide receivers as a freshman in reception. So I think that there is talent there for sure.
Yeah, that's a solid pick. It is a spot that he has the potential to be the one there, while Myers is a fantastic NFL wide receiver. I don't think he's the one. So you have the chance to take that as much as anyone can take that on a team where Brock Bowers is. So you like the opportunity. At this point, I'm not really considering any wide receivers. RBs, you can consider some guys here, but I think I'm more stuck between quarterback and I've seen even just today Sanders go ahead of is it pronounced Shook? I don't want to learn that guy's name. I don't really want to draft him, but the reality of it is the second that he's starting a game as a quarterback, I can get a 25-second, 26-second for him from somebody in my league. And Arroyo, if he does pass Fant on the depth chart, even there's not even a guarantee that he's more valuable. I I think it's bad advice not to take him here, David. So you get your wish, and I hate you for it.
Like I said, at this range, it's hard to pass on him no matter how you feel about him just because of his situation. He's like going to be 26 or already is 26, and there's some questionable highlight films out there, but he has shown some arm talent. A lot of scouts love him. A lot of people that are way better at this than I am. So it could definitely pay off. I think at this value, it's likely to pay off, to be honest with you. So if you want to take him sooner, that's fine. I personally probably wouldn't consider him before about this range. But like I said, if you're taking him at the back end of the second, it has a good chance to pay off. So I don't blame you at all. We could dive into the next tier of running backs, which is kind of deep, and it's just pick your flavor. I think Jalen Milrow makes some sense here, but at the 212, I think Elijah Royo is a great value. There's talk they might try to trade Fant, and even if they don't, he's been all right, but he's nothing special. If you're going to be good, you should be able to beat out Noah Fant eventually. Maybe not year one because tight ends do take time to develop sometimes. But if I'm counting on my 212 to start, I'm probably not in a great position with my roster anyways. So I like the value there.
Yeah, I've liked Elijah Royo through the whole process. I mean, just the athleticism that he presents, as well as what I don't see a whole lot of tight ends do in college is just stretch the field deep, and that's kind of what put him on my radar was his ability to win deep, and also he created some yak as well. So I think you could really squeeze him all over the field. Not sure about him as a blocker necessarily, but I think the upside as a receiver is great. My top two players on my board currently would be Jalen Milrow and Dylan Sampson. Those are the two guys I'd certainly be considering here. I think that Samson, if Judkins has an injury, you could probably sell Samson for a second. So I think that he's probably a good pick here. I think that there's at least some percentage chance that Dylan Sampson forces this to be a timeshare because he just offers a different skill set, kind of like what we saw with Trevion Henderson and Quinnshon Judkins in college. Although I don't think Sampson's quite Trevion Henderson. I don't think he's like super far off. I think he's a really talented player. But Jalen Miller, I expect that one day they will give him a chance to be the starter. So I think that if he is starting and shows some flashes, there's at least a chance that you could get a first round pick for him if people start to get excited about him. So I think that he's a good investment right here, the 301.
At the 302, I'm torn between two players and not really anyone that either of you two have mentioned yet. At least I don't believe. Maybe David did mention the name Sanders, but I'm very seriously considering him here. I just think he will start. I would if there was a over under 2.5 starts for Sanders, I would take the over on 2.5 this year. And I think when he's starting those games, it's just instant profit and also the chance that he could hit. The other guy that I'm considering drafting here, Jaden Blue, a guy that is kind of coming out of the blue here just because of his landing spot. Anybody going to the Cowboys is interesting. It's not a running back room we really believe in. We don't really believe in Javante. Don't really believe in Miles Sanders. Neither of them really got this is our guy money. We expected them to draft somebody. And I think it's very probable that where Judkins and where Henderson went kind of just caused them to like step off. And then beginning of the fourth round, we saw guys goes that caused them to just probably step off as well. Is kind of just the way I view there. And then they just waited to get a guy that they kind of like. So if I thought it was a guy that they really liked, I'd be taking him way ahead of the third. But I think I'm going to take Blue here in the third, surprise myself a little bit, and just hope that you guys don't take Sanders because I'd also love him here. Don't take him, guys.
I'll just ease your mind right now. I'm not going to take Sanders. I do understand the argument, and I think this is about the range I would start to consider him because he fell to the fifth round. He was the second quarterback taken by the Browns. Like, where is he in that pecking order? And like, I get everything about it. I do like him as a prospect too, and I'm hopeful that he gets a chance to start. I think he should at least get a couple games and see what they got. But it's a lot to climb through. There's still a few guys I'm a little more excited about right now. Maybe not at quarterback, but I am going to take someone that JP mentioned a few picks ago. There's really only two wide receivers left that I have any interest in drafting. To be honest with you, like it might happen that I draft one here or there after this. Yeah, I guess so. I'm going to take Kyle Williams. I like the landing spot. I've heard some people comp him to Stephon Diggs, so to have Stephon Diggs help him become more like Stephon Diggs, pretty good. There's really wide open targets there in that offense. If he does latch on to Drake May as his wide receiver one of the future, then that's a huge hit. Even if he's just kind of second or third option volume guy that you can spot start with in the third round, I'm happy with that. Worst case he's a roster clogger and I just burned a third, but I do like the prospect. I like the landing spot, so I'm pretty happy with him here. And just because Justin mentioned it earlier, if I was this team from the 3 slot, I'd probably consider a running back because this is such a strong running back class that I don't want to leave with just 3 wide receivers and no running backs. But I haven't really been considering that this draft. I'm just going best available. So just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, he was one of the last two wide receivers that I really care about anymore. It's him and Jalen Knoll. I'm not going to take Noel quite yet because it is kind of crowded with Nico and Christian Kirk, Jaden Higgins. So maybe my next pick, if he's still there, I'll consider him. But still, I'm not quite going to take him. But Kyle Williams, he's got a wide open opportunity, and I've heard a lot of people say that he could have been the top of round two potentially, but obviously he's the top of round three. It's not quite the same, but definitely like the player. The I just mentioned in my last pick that I was considering Dylan Sampson, so he's going to be the player that I take here. I think he's a good running back. I had him at, like right there with the Cam Scatabo, um, like the 5'6", no, not five. Had him right there as like RB 6 or 7 there for most of the process. You don't love to see that he falls to the fifth round. That's pretty unfortunate. But what he was able to do as a 20-year-old in the SEC, taking over the backfield there, I think was just very, very impressive. Like I said, I don't think it's impossible that he forces close to a 50-50 split with Judkins, maybe more realistic, like a 60-40 potentially. But even worst case scenario, he's a handcuff running back here in this spot. So I like him here, the 304.
Yeah, late fourth actually was Samson, 24th pick in the fourth round. Not draft capital that you love to see. Draft capital you're okay seeing with Scatabo where he's got a path, but I just don't think there's any world where we see him being better than Judkins from a volume standpoint. Maybe a complimentary back to Judkins is probably more what they had in mind with when he dropped to them there. I'm not even sure this is the best quarterback pick available. I'm not sure that I shouldn't take Will Howard here, but I'm going to take Shador Sanders over Howard, even though I think Howard's probably a better process pick. I just think I still believe he's a guy that has the ability to be a Tua Tagovailoa type in the NFL. I don't believe in Gabriel. I think Flacco will start his way out of a job eventually. And what else do they have there, right? I mean, it's just I think he's going to get some starts. And basically, if I get 4 shares of Sanders when he gets his first start, I'm going to try to sell 2 for a second. And I'm going to try to hold on to the other 2 as a lottery ticket. Like I will take some profit because I do think it's the right thing to do because it is David outlined the mountain he has to climb. And I'm not telling you he's going to climb that mountain, but I'm going to tell you that if he gets starts, you'll be able to get more for him than the mid third in valuation. And I think he's going to get starts. So it's a simple process for me here.
Yeah, it's hard to blame you at this point. These guys are all dart throws, obviously. You're basically hoping for a spike week or two where you can take advantage of a start that you weren't expecting or a sell window that you wouldn't otherwise have, which is really why we love to take running backs, quarterbacks in this range because those spike weeks are really easy to point out. Often they come due to injury or in quarterbacks could, situation, it could be poor performance or something. But, I don't blame the pick. I do think Will Howard is a smart player to consider here, but I think we got to dive into this weird tier. I don't know. We're kind of playing chicken with it. So I just don't know who to pick. Devin Neal, New Orleans, that's not a bad landing spot. I believe he was 6th round draft capital. Ollie Gordon, Miami, what was he? Was he 5th? I believe it's day 3. It doesn't really matter.
That's 603.
6th also, yeah. I do think though the guy I'm going to go with, if I can find him, I just need to start typing these in. I'm gonna go with Jarquez Hunter, who went to the Rams in the 4th round. I know they drafted Corum last year. Everybody loved Corum. He didn't really look that great. Maybe he was still healing from his injuries in college, but I think they like Hunter. I think, we expect Kyron to keep his job at this point. I think that's fair to say. But it is a little shaky. He did have some fumbling issues. And if you get in Sean McVay's doghouse, it's sometimes really hard to get out. So that's still a possibility for Kyron Williams. And if that happens and Hunter ends up as the guy, not Corum, then I think his ceiling is massive. It's a low probability he hits that outcome, in my opinion. But I just like the very small potential for the massive upside that I think he has in his situation compared to the rest of the shaky profiles we're looking at.
Yeah, he's one of the round four running backs that kind of didn't expect to get there. Was Woody Marks, Trevor Etienne, and Jarquez Hunter. Kind of was surprised by those three. don't love their profiles. I think Hunter is the one that I like the most, so I can't blame you there. And he's going to a good offense where if he did get opportunity, he could be successful. At this point, I'm just going to lean into the talent. I'm going to take Devin Neal. Didn't love to see him fall to the top of round 6. But when I look at that running back room, you've obviously got Alvin Kamara, who is a stud, but we know that he's getting pretty old. You also got Clyde Edwards-Helaire, which we know he's failed to show the ability to be an above average running back. And they got Kendre Miller, who's kind of done the same. He's been in the NFL for a couple of years, struggled with injury and whatnot, but even then, I don't think he's shown a ton. So I think that there's a pretty good chance that Devin Neal establishes himself as the backup. If I get a handcuff right here that potentially has the opportunity to take over as the starter in 2026, if Kamara we start to see a fall off. I think Kamara's still good, but I think that there's at least a chance they start to consider moving on after this year. I think it's worth the swing at this point. And like I said with Dylan Samson and other running backs in this range, the starter gets hurt, you might be able to get a second for him.
Yeah, I'm glad I did not trade for like a Harold Fannin because when I'm looking at the board here, I'm looking at the tight end room. I don't really see anybody in the tight end room. I had a chance to trade for Harold Fannin right before the NFL draft. I didn't think he was going to go to a spot where he's behind an Njoku. I don't like tight ends. I don't like wide receivers. This is the point of the draft where David alluded to earlier. Like it's RB and it's quarterback. There's one quarterback left I'm still interested in. Is Will Howard. I'm gonna hope I can get him at the 311 because I think there's running backs I like better. Running back's interesting. A lot of names I'm actually really intrigued on as third round dart throws. So Brashard Smith is one that really comes to mind, although he was a 7th rounder for the Chiefs. We've seen them be willing to run with whoever gives them value and they don't have to pay there. And a pass catching guy catching passes from Patrick Mahomes, if he can work his way to the offense, is amazing. Like we love that. Woody Marks, USC running back that went to the Houston Texans. Really interested in him here potentially as a heir apparent to Mixon and a handcuff if Mixon goes down. I do like ETN a lot. I think he's a phenomenal value in the late third, early fourth because of the name value, first of all. If we end up seeing him either somehow win the job, Hubbard gets injured, and he's getting starts. Of course, he has to also pass Dowdle on the depth chart and Brooks when healthy. So obviously it's murky, but there's a lot of interesting guys here. Jordan James is another name that comes up. I know I'm just ranting here because I don't want to make a choice, but if I have to make a choice, I'm going to go Smith. Not the way I thought I was going to go when I started talking, but I think he's got the most upside just because of the offense. Pacheco on a contract year. You never know. It's the Chiefs.
I like that you talked yourself out of. I believe you talked yourself out of Trevor Etienne there. I could be wrong, but that was a fun ride to go on with you. Yeah, I mean, look, this is just throw a dart at the running back board, grab a name out of the hat. I don't know how you want to play it. Maybe that's how I'll do it. I'm going to make a hat. I'm going to put a bunch of these names in there. So when I have thirds, because I mean, you just never know. Really, you're hoping you get the right guy who, unfortunately, is behind someone who gets injured. Not that we root for injuries. That's just a reality of fantasy. None of these guys really have an inside track to starting. Jordan James is interesting because McCaffrey's injured, but Garindo's there. I will say, just because you mentioned there's no tight ends you'd consider, I would consider Gadsden at the end of the third, going into the fourth. I think I'm going to do something I wasn't expecting either, though. I'm going to take Taj Brooks, went to Cincinnati. I think he's a good complement to Chase Brown. I think there is a chance he gets some early down work, and he ends up as the handcuff there with maybe some like really desperation flex value.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I mean, it's a good offense, and there's not really a backup that we think is great. I mean, Zach Moss is at least interesting, but he's not somebody we're super scared of. So I think Taj Brooks is a pretty good pick there. The guy I want to go with really is DJ Giddens because I think that he's got the inside track to be the backup. They moved on from Trey Sermon. They didn't bring him back, so I think DJ Giddens is a player I could have seen going in the third round or fourth round of the NFL draft. I think he's a talented guy. When you just look at what his college production was combined with what he did at the NFL Combine with some receiving ability, man, I think he could be that clear handcuff. And Jonathan Taylor, he's not old yet, but he's starting to get up there in age a little bit, which that's usually when we start to see injury risk increase a little bit. And I think this is a run first offense too. So I like DJ Giddens right here, although there's one other player on the board that I really love.
He is a guy that I was heavily considering as well as I was looking back over. Didn't mention him last time, but they're all handcuffs, and he's a handcuff at a place where not sure what the quarterback situation is going to look like, but we've seen running back success. We've even seen some backup running back success when Jonathan Taylor was out last year. So good process, good process. I'm going to end up going with the guy I said I would draft if he came here at 311. I might I don't know if I'm still taking him here if Aaron Rodgers signs here, but I'm still 3, 4 turns starting to consider him even if Aaron Rodgers is here because Aaron Rodgers is kind of here in my head. But I think it's worth the risk of Rodgers signing here. I think it's worth the risk even when Rodgers is here around the 3, 4 turn because he's the type of guy that I think the Steelers will like. I think he's the type of character guy that they're going to be happy to have after having had problems with a Pickett in the past, and then Russell Wilson, I think he's fine as a locker room guy enough, but also I think he kind of rubs people the wrong ways. And I think this is just a guy who knows how to win football games. And if they want to run, play defense, and have a game manager quarterback, I think he could handle that. Like crazier things have happened than him working his way into a starting job here in Pittsburgh. So worth the bet at 311.
I think the decision here, I'll try to make it quick because at this point, we've already mentioned everyone I'm considering. I would consider Noel. He's the last receiver that we've kind of talked about as worth drafting potentially. I think if this is a true 3-round draft, that's actually, I think, what I'm going to do just because I know I'll play with my fab and I'll just bid on all of these running backs and whoever I get outbid on, I don't get. But everybody, I really do see them as names out of a hat at this point, and there's still several of them. But there's only one receiver I have much interest in, so I'm just going to take him here, and I'll play the fab game in waivers.
Yeah, he was going to be the guy that I was going to shout out as my number one honorable mention. He's the guy that I alluded to earlier, said is a player that I love. And he was actually right in the wide receiver 6 or 7 spot for me in my rankings going to the NFL draft. So I think he's talented, but when he just followed draft capital and maybe being the fourth receiver on the board, I honestly think there's a chance he could be the wide receiver too by the end of the year there. I think he's a little bit better than Higgins when you look at him as a separator. But I'm going to pick one guy as my honorable mention here that sticks out the most to me, and that's going to be running back Jordan James out of Oregon. He'd be my next pick because we've got Kyle Shanahan, the San Francisco 49ers. Top of the fifth round isn't terrible, and we know that Guerrero's there as a backup, but at least he's got a chance to beat him out. I saw that there's 2 different people that had Jordan James that were reputable. I believe Dane Brugler had him as a top 7 running back, and there's one other guy I can't remember. So there's definitely fans of his around the league.
And along the same theme there, I'm going to go running back as well for my honorable mention. And as much as I do have a love affair with legacy players, and I do like ETN. I think process wise, I'd go Woody Marks over him just because I know he has a much easier role and much easier path to the role we want, which is the backup role. The guy that could be the as much as possible 1-for-1 replacement if Mixon goes out with injury, and that's Woody Marks. Not much of a question for me here that I'd go him over ETN at this point. So it's got to be Marks. Not really saying I'm making a bet he's gonna be the long-term solution there. That's always, the high-end outcome with any of these guys. But just remembering what we're going for is spot starts and the ability to sell this guy for a third and another running back. Maybe Trevor Etienne in the third if Woody Marsh gets a start. It's the process.
Yeah, and I mean, next guy on my board would also be another running back, probably Trevor Etienne, to be honest with you. But I'm going to shout out someone that I mentioned earlier. That's tight end Oronde Gatson went to the Chargers in the 5th round. Their depth chart above him is Tyler Conklin and Will Disley, so not exciting. I'm not trying to say Gatson's going to be like a difference maker at tight end necessarily, but if you're drafting a guy in the 4th that you can start, especially if you got a patchwork tight end room, I think that's really good play. And I think his upside is in the receiving side of things. So if he does hit, I think he could be a serviceable starter.
Yeah, please let us know in the comments below what we got right, what we got wrong, what you would change. For those of our Spotify listeners, Apple Podcast listeners, we're going to have the board linked in the episode description below as well. So can see everyone we've talked about. So thank you for joining us for another episode of the Data Construction Podcast. We hope you found this as helpful for you as it was for us. Please remember to like and subscribe wherever you listen or view. And for all of us here at the Dino Construction Podcast, until next time.